Hello and welcome to another episode of Living Imperfectly Perfect Trauma Recovery Podcast with me, Gemma Blythe, the only podcast which turns imperfections into perfections and discusses living authentically ourselves. So, without further ado, here we go. In this week's episode, we will be discussing how I turned my own imperfections into perfections and the Japanese tradition of Wabi Sabi, and how they turned pots that were broken into something truly unique. So, if that's something which you are interested in hearing more about, then stick around. And as well, we are going to be discussing how imperfection is so underrated. So keep listening for more of that.
Living imperfectly perfect. It's true. We rise on our struggles, break through. Together we'll find something brand new. 'Cause living imperfect is what we do. Imperfectly perfect. Let's go.
Hello, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Living Imperfectly Perfect podcast, where this week we're going to be discussing how imperfections are so overrated. Okay, so when we typically think about our imperfections, we think about the limits that they bring, and we think about the stigmas behind them. So with that, I'm talking mental health issues, I'm talking body positivity, I'm talking any skin complaints, any medical diagnoses at all. But really, when we think about imperfections, that's what society tells us to do. We are taught to place as much stigma around everything as possible. With this, I'm thinking women's periods, women's mental health, men's mental health, men's health. This is something which impacts all of us as a whole, and it's something which shouldn't. I mean, we're in the 21st century, and we are still talking about things like this that impact us even now. How utterly bizarre, right? So, in the comments, wherever you are watching this, please put down how you think of your imperfections and why you think of them that way. Because I'm curious about what my listeners really think about their imperfections. So, with that in mind, I want to share with you a few short stories about what I've been through that I used to consider my imperfections and what inspired me to become a life coach today. So when I was, I'm going to go right back, I think. When I was 13, okay, my father had just passed away from a brain tumor, a glioblastoma. Some of you will know that if you've been following me on Instagram for quite a while. And I didn't know where I belonged. I still don't know where I belong, if I'm honest. So when my dad passed away, it left this gaping hole as grief normally does. And I looked back and I had people bullying me because I was without a dad. A lot of the time I was the odd one out. People didn't know how to talk to me. So grief was the stigma. And I think grief still is a stigma for a lot of people, if they're honest. So when I was thinking about that, I remember classes where I would be the odd one out. In drama, however, I was called on to direct a few short pieces in the classroom, and I was allowed to be myself. For the first time ever, was able to step into my own skin and be like, hey, hi, I'm here. And the bullies used to hate it because I used to put them in roles that they were never gonna like. So that that felt amazing to me. Um, so that's I seem to take my strengths from that time and use them. So I'm talking about using grief to connect with other people. I'm talking about using your talents to connect with other people. If people don't know how to talk to you, approach them first. And be the first one to kind of like say, hey, how are you doing? Or I heard you went through this really, really crap time, but I'm here to help. But through that time, I was helping others. I was in the library most of the time because that's where I found my peace and quiet and my inner sanctuary, if you like. So I was in the library and sorting out books and just talking with as many people as I could. Then things changed. So shortly after that, it came out that I was abused by my next door neighbor. That was the first time that I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody about what I was going through because counseling wasn't offered. I was getting grief counseling because of my dad passing away, but I wasn't getting counseling to help with what I'd been through. So around that time, I was journaling, I was reflecting because I couldn't talk to anybody else. I didn't feel like I could confide in anybody because the investigations were still going on and things were still up in the air. So I thought, right, okay, I need to branch out. I need to talk to people. I need to find people that have been going through this, but I couldn't. Social media was only just becoming a thing. Instagram wasn't around back then. If it was small. So I thought, right, okay, it's just me. Then I thought, I'm used to this. So being independent with my schoolwork and everything else, and I thought, I'm used to this. I can do this. So I went through, made notes on how I was feeling, and then I started to think, well, it's not only me going through this. And I knew it wasn't only me going through it. I knew because I'd been silenced that others had been silenced as well that had been going through the same thing. And it wasn't until late 2022 when I was in therapy and I was listing all these things like I was ashamed of what I'd been through. I felt guilty at times. I was my own worst enemy. I was a chronic perfectionist. If something didn't go right at work, I would beat myself up time and time again. And then it struck me last year when I had left what was supposed to be my dream job. I it really dawned on me that I've been striving for perfection this whole time. And I thought, hang on, why? So I started to delve in and delve in and delve in. And all the way through secondary school, I was taught to revise, 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 revise. On the subjects that I was taught to revise the most in, I was getting not good marks. I was getting lower marks in those than I was in the subjects that I wasn't revising a lot in. So that was one. Two is that if I tried to put my all into even an article that I wrote online, I wouldn't be able to make sense of it. And it felt as though I was hitting a brick wall. And I thought, there it is again. Perfection. So then I started to delve in more. And I came across this technique that the Japanese use called Wabi Sabi. And they use that technique to join together already broken pots with gold. And I thought, they're taking something which was perfect and making it imperfect, and it's still being the same pot, but now more unique because of how it's been fixed. So I thought, if I take myself, broken down because of trauma, then went through therapy. I didn't have a life coach. I wish I had. And then taken that, so I'm taken something which is perfect to start off with, not broken, broken through therapy, and then put back together again, just like the pot, not with gold, with therapy. And I drew comparisons from that. And that's where I started with living imperfectly perfect, because I thought everybody's living imperfectly perfect. Everybody's been through one thing or another. Everybody's either had mental health issues, PCOS, ADHD, generalized anxiety disorder, depression, things like that to get through. But if you take yourself and then build yourself back up together again, that's something truly magical. And the rebuilding process is incredible. It's powerful. It's intense at times. But my goodness, is it worth it? So that was my inspiration to work with female trauma survivors and anybody that thinks that their imperfections are limits. Because what I truly learned back then is that if I take perfection, that's the limit. That's truly a limit. So again, that's why I am now releasing my course, Unveiling Your Authentic Self, which you can read more about on my website. And I encourage, truly encourage, if you've resonated with any of this, come take part, see what you think, because the process behind it is truly, truly magical. And yeah, it's just, so next time you think about imperfection as being a limit, judge that thought, judge that negative thought, and say, do you know what? No, it's not a limit. Other people might see it as my limit, but it's not, because it makes me who I am. It makes me perfect. And that's what I want you to say to yourself this morning. So my task to you is to take 5 minutes, look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am imperfectly perfect, just the way I am. And then I want you to repost that on social media with the hashtag living imperfectly perfect. We are going to tackle perfection together. So thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope that this has been informative for you, even inspirational, I don't know. But please leave a review, comment, like, share, subscribe. You know what to do. And I will see you next time on Living Imperfectly Perfect Trauma Recovery Podcast. Much love. Sending so much hope to wherever you are. And I will see you soon.